God still hasn't struck me down for that. I should have been smited by now. Smote. I should have been smoted by now, but maybe he forgot. He's very forgetful. Hey folks, welcome to Joel Reads Bible. I'm Joel and I read Bible so that yous don't scots to, which is another really cool way of saying so that you don't have to. This is one of our really super duper exciting recap episodes. We have just finished reading Exodus chapter 1 through 10, and this is the recap episode for those horrible chapters. I want to thank all my subscribers. I'm reading the whole entire Bible, and for you to hang out with me and watch these episodes and comment on them, there's community in that, and I just know that I'm not alone reading horrific things that God is commanding the Hebrews to do to animals for what seems to be no good reason. Yeah, it sucks, I get it. It sucks for everyone involved. But we're doing it together, and that's all we can ask for at this point, right? And if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, come join the community and watch all the back videos. I'm reading the whole entire Bible, and you should watch me read the whole entire Bible so that you actually know what's in there. Don't worry, you're not doing it alone. I will be there for you for the whole entire horrible experience. That being said, let's get right into it. Leviticus 1 was, it must have been nondescript because I do not have a note written down for it. I don't really remember it that much. I guess we were just getting into some of the sacrifices, but I don't really have new information that I didn't say during that episode. Unfortunately, these episodes maybe weren't that dense. They didn't have really that much in them that was all that exciting. It was just like kind of the same thing over and over again. And you get numb to the amount of brutality, which again, I think I said this before, but it's probably a little trick that God is using, or the writers of the Bible, because eventually we're going to be killing a bunch of kids, right? So it's like, let's get them desensitized to killing. We'll use animals for a while, just blood spilled all over the desert. And then when it becomes children, they'll be okay with it. They're not going to worry about it at all. We get to Leviticus chapter 2. I don't know if you remember that episode, but I was acting out doing the sacrifice. I think it was probably the bird one where, you got to rip the head right off and bleed it out. And it's really disgusting. And I thought, it would be a funny video. Well, maybe not a funny video, but like at least an impactful video if I actually did that in real life, got a bird or got a ram or got a goat and just like acted out what they were doing. And then I was like, that would probably be illegal, right? Like, I don't think I could get away with that. I think I would literally get like in trouble. People would question my mental health. They would want to take me to the hospital to be assessed. If I were to do these things and anyone were to notice them or find the video and be like, what is he do? What is that? But there's somebody doing like these horrific things on video. I think maybe with like a goat or something, maybe I could get away with it if I was like, how to butcher a goat. But if I like bled it out, cut it up, and then burned some of it as a sacrifice, you don't think that would raise a lot of like alarm bells? You know what I mean? Not even red flags. More like, this guy needs serious help. Let's put him in the psych ward for, a year. And I still don't know how the argument works for, but that was the people of a time. That we are so different that at that time it was just, this makes perfect sense to do it. Those people were just the type of people that would need to do something like this. I don't know how that argument plays out, but apparently that's what it must be. They would come here and they'd be like, oh, you listen to loud, aggressive rock and roll music? That's weird. We're not used to that. And then they were like, "What? Oh, those rock and roll stars wear makeup and they bite heads off bats." And I'd be like, "Yeah, that is weird now too. That is also that's weird today. Ripping a turtle dove's head off or biting a head off a bat. These are weird things. They are abnormal. They are gross. They are shocking. The difference is that That's one guy trying to make money, trying to, freak out his fans and do something crazy so he gets a news story out of the deal. Whereas yours is allegedly an all-powerful God who wants to see you kill animals for no reason. There's a vast difference. Whenever you compare God to whatever people are doing, it fails. You can't do that. You've got the attributes of God, which are not the attributes of people. You'll use it the other way around. You'll go, we can't understand that. We're just people. Okay, but when God does horrific things, you go, but look, people are doing the horrific things. It's yeah, but that's God. Hold him to a higher standard. You're saying he's all good. He shouldn't resemble humanity at all, but he does because it's written by people. Well, I guess we started out with a pretty solid rant there. Moving on to chapter number 3, nothing really happens. I don't have any notes for that one, so it obviously wasn't that interesting. So in chapter 4, I think I missed something about the priest having iniquity or sin or something like that, and that sin being able to be visited upon the people. I don't really remember exactly. Does that mean that the priest's sins or guilt can be transferred to the nation? That's a really weird thing that kind of occurs or is hinted at or said a few times in these chapters, which is that an individual can affect the whole group. And there's kind of this ongoing theme where if I do something wrong, my children will pay, God doesn't deal with the individual person on an individual level. There's this group that is affected. And I think that goes to show how tribal all of this was. These are very, very tribal people. For me, in 2024, the way I live my life, I don't feel like I'm really part of a tribe in the same way. I'm not a rock. I'm not an island. There are people in my life, but I certainly don't connect to some sort of group mindset, tribal mindset. I just have friends. And then I do think of myself as an individual person. If I think more altruistically and I consider other people by and large, I do think of humanity as a whole. I'm part of this much larger thing that is humanity. But I don't think I am of a people, and that people, say Dutch, I'm Dutch. So I'm of Dutch, I'm of the people of Holland. And if I do something wrong, my iniquity might be visited upon them, or I might actually have to leave the tribe if I do something wrong or I get something wrong, or I might be affected by the priests of the tribe of Holland, which definitely are going to be Catholic or Dutch Reform or something like that. And I might be kicked out of the club or country or, nation and have to go fend for myself. These things are absolutely ridiculous, right? Because we don't live in that particular time. But I can understand that if you needed a tribe to survive back in the Bible times, if you couldn't just wander the desert by yourself, you die, so you needed a lot of people, then it makes sense that you are going to be cut off from your people would be a huge problem. I don't know if you will be cut off from your people is in chapter 4, but it is an idea that shows up in these 10 chapters. It would be really, really hard and really, really bad for somebody to be cut off from their people. So it goes back to a question I keep asking: why is a timeless God making laws and rules and systems and regimens that are of a time? You would think his concerns and his understanding would go well beyond the tribal mindset of a particular group, right? Because it's God. But if everything is still the mindset of that group, it's probably just coming from that group. So these chapters are all about killing animals that don't have defects. Just finding all the best animals and killing them for God for no particular reason again. Well, as a sacrifice for sins, but we all know sin isn't a thing and God doesn't exist. So it's no good reason. If God did exist, I think it would still be no good reason. It would just be because God said, which isn't a great reason. I guess if the reason would be because he'll kill you if you don't, right? And he'll kill you if you get it wrong, and we'll get to that in chapter 10. Then fair enough. Okay, then that would be a good reason for you to do it. But there's still not a good reason for Yahweh to require it. But I thought it'd be funny if they kind of rewrote Charlotte's Web for Bible times. You have these animals that can talk and have personalities and things like that, and they realize what's going to happen. Because you'll remember in Charlotte's Web, there is a concern that, Wilbur might be eaten. And so they want to make him seem really, really smart so that he'll be able to go to the fair and win a prize. In this case, they'll be like trying to get defects. You know what I mean? They'll be doing things to be like, oh no, take a chunk out of my ears so that they don't burn me for that Yahweh character. Maybe I'll last a little bit longer. Let's try drinking in front of some sticks with stripes on them. Maybe our babies will become striped, so we don't have to worry about them being killed for Yahweh. I just think that'd be a fun version of Charlotte's Web. So if anyone wants to write that, go for it. It's all yours. So then we get to chapter 5. I don't know if you guys pay attention to my cute little thumbnails, but I've been changing the color for every book. So I chose blue just because I felt like Levitical priesthood. Blue just seemed, for some reason, to make sense to me. Although it probably should have been red and purple and gold. It should have been blood red. I did that for Exodus. I should have done like Exodus blue, and then this one just like this deep blood red, maybe with even like some smears or like dripping or something. This is the bloodiest book. Like I don't know if it gets less bloody if they start just like talking about things normally, but this is just brutal, killing after killing after killing. Like this is crazy. They really should have like broken it up or something like that, because it's too much. It's too much gratuitous killing of animals. But I did want to highlight that in Leviticus chapter 5, we get a very suspicious verse. And it's only suspicious because of what we learn later in the Bible. I guess I didn't touch on it at the time, and I really want to drive this point home. So in verse 11 it says, "But if he can't afford 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, then he shall bring his offering for that in which he has sinned, 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a sin offering." You can be forgiven of your sins through this offering with flour. All you need is 1/10 of an ephah. Now, later on in the book, Paul is going to say there is no forgiveness of sins without the shedding of blood. Okay? So just keep that in mind. That is not true. That is false. Paul got it wrong. The Bible failed again. You can have forgiveness without the shedding of blood. You just need a thing of flour. So then we get to chapter 6, and I'm not really speaking specifically to any chapter, but I guess I just thought of certain things while I was editing particular chapters. So while I was editing chapter 6, I thought the detail in just the way these things need to be done makes it seem almost sophisticated. There's something about just the slight variations and the order in which we need to do things, and even the wood needing to be in order or whatever that means, that it's just like somebody was really thinking this thing through. This was very specific. This was smart. This is some really clever stuff. But in reality, it's like, well, no, it's just barbarism. It's really just the brutal slaughter of animals in countless different, weirdly specific ways. Don't think for a second that like, oh yeah, this means something. This is important. It's just another group of superstitious ancient people who didn't know how the world worked at all, and were like, we got to appease this God. I think there's a God, and I'm worried that he's going to get really, really angry. And you know what? We're actually going to find our identity in the God, and we're going to say that the God loves us more than everyone else. But we do need to appease the God still, because that's what we do around here. We all kill animals for gods, sometimes even people. When we read directions about the Passover in Exodus 12 and all the tabernacle stuff, was very, very detailed. It's spoken of as if this thing is all brand new. It's like this new thing. we're doing these sacrifices and this is how you're going to do each step. But it's not really new, is it? Like Cain and Abel were doing something. What were they doing? It was way, way, way back in the day. Where were the instructions for that? I'm still curious. How did they know what they were supposed to do? Were these like very rudimentary, primitive sacrifices? Had God not yet developed this more detail-orientated, it should just be oriented, regimen of sacrifices at that time? Why does it seem like God is continually evolving over time and throughout these stories? It seems like the ideas of God sort of take more shape as we move forward. I don't know if the apologetic would be something like, yeah, God is timeless, so he doesn't change, he doesn't develop, he doesn't evolve, but he changes with the people. But it seems to me as though people of this other time were not so different than people of today in the sense that they were human beings. And probably some of their concerns would be similar to ours, if not exactly the same, just played out differently. So there's this weird thing that happens in Christian apologetics where there's this recognition of humanity being the same because we're made in God's image, and all the things that we learned back in the Bible times is still applicable today, so we can see things that matter to us now. So there's this timeless thing that really does apply. But then there's this other thing where it's like, if it doesn't make sense and it's brutal and it's ridiculous and all those things, it's like, well, God met them where they are. They were completely different. They were vastly different than you and I. We can't even get our head around that. That seems weird to us, but they're completely different, and that's what they needed at the time. God needed to allow slavery. Like, there's just no way out of it. God needed to make them kill countless animals. This had to happen because they were so different. It seems to be counterintuitive to me because this keeps happening throughout the Bible, right? We have God having to anthropomorphize himself to Abraham, and then anthropomorphize himself to Moses. Then we're going to learn that God is immutable. He doesn't change his mind. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. We're going to learn all sorts of omni-attributes somehow. So all that anthropomorphizing had to happen for them, but we don't need it. We can get it. We can understand because our brains are so different than theirs. And then we have a covenant for Abraham, and we have a covenant for Moses, and we have some other covenants in the future. I think I heard there's 7 covenants because people keep changing drastically. God's not changing, but people are changing drastically, and they need new rules and new laws and new situations in order to do whatever they need to do for God or something. Like, this stuff just seems really, really counterintuitive. It doesn't seem to make sense. So moving on to chapter 7, we get verse 18, which says, "If any meat of the sacrifice of his peace offerings is eaten on the 3rd day, it will not be accepted, and it shall not be credited to him who offers it. It will be an abomination. The soul who eats any of it will bear his iniquity." So that's a really weird system where somebody offers some meat, and if someone else eats it on the 3rd day, like it sat out for too long, right? Like the 1st day, 2nd day, this is all fine, but the 3rd day, then the offering becomes null and void. The guy who offers it doesn't get the benefit of that. And the guy who eats it will take on the iniquity. Now, I don't know if the guy who offers it, like his iniquity goes to the other guy. How would you necessarily know which meat? I don't know if it's very clear. Like someone's like, oh, I'll have some of that. And how did they know when that had been sacrificed? And then how would the guy that did the sacrifice know that his meat was eaten? Like, do they just leave it there? I just don't know if they're like looking over it and like who's paying attention to this. Some Christians believe that diseases and natural disasters and those types of things are a result of sin. You know, what if someone eats your meat, and that's not a euphemism, 3 days later, and next thing you know, you get like a really, really bad cold and you're like, why am I so sick? You know, someone ate your meat, man. You left your meat out for 3 days. You know, someone else was mowing down on it. Now they've got your iniquity. They also have the same cold. You both have cold sores. It's like, what were they doing? I don't know if cold sores are a disease. Now in the New Testament, Paul is going to be like, hey, listen guys, by the way, you know, don't worry about food that's been sacrificed to false gods. You can eat that. That's no big whoop. We're okay with it. These gods are just demons. And if you don't believe that they're real, you don't need to concern yourself with it. It's only if you believe it's real and you think you're doing something wrong, then you are doing something wrong. If you believe it, it's wrong. If you don't believe it, it's not wrong, which is kind of a weird sort of doctrine. But here we have somebody who's getting in trouble for eating food sacrificed to the real God, but the timing is off. The timing is so important to God. I'm very worried about timing. As a timeless God, I'm very obsessed with how much time meat has been left out. Look, if this is a health conscious thing, like don't leave meat out in a desert for 3 days, it's probably not a good idea to eat it. Great. That may be the impetus for this. Why couldn't God or the guy who wrote this book just say what they mean? If it was a health conscious thing, why don't they just go, hey guys, don't eat meat that's been sitting out for 3 days. It's not going to be very good for you. Just say that. You don't think they're going to get that? Why'd you have to motivate them with iniquity and sin and things like that? That just seems so bizarre to me. But maybe these people were like, there's no such thing as bacteria. Obviously they didn't know about bacteria, but I don't think I'll get a funny tummy. They're like, no, it's sin. That was, by the way, not another euphemism. They're like, no, it's sin. If you do that, it's sinful. You'll be doing iniquity. So don't do that. They'll just be puking in the camp, and we just can't have this. We're constantly cleaning up puke. These people are eating meat that has gone off. By the way, why are we killing so much meat? We've got so much meat that's just sitting around for 3 days, no one to eat it. We have 2 million people here. They can't eat the meat fast enough. We have a bunch of old meat. Why are we doing this, Well, it's because Yahweh loves barbecue. Now, verse 24 actually continues this idea of good hygiene. It says, the fat of that which dies of itself and the fat of that which is torn of animals may be used for any other service, but you shall in no way eat of it. And I think that's a good rule. If an animal is ripped the thing apart, if it dies of some natural causes and you don't what are those natural causes? Probably disease or something like that. That's good. That's smart. So maybe there's a couple verses in chapter 7 which are like, okay, we get it. You guys have realized what makes you sick. Yeah, by the way, kill all the animals you want. Yahweh is not going to stop you from getting sick off of this stuff. There's hey, that's a natural process. It's going to happen. Yeah, he parted the Red Sea. That was a natural process too. So then we get a few stirring verses in the end of this chapter. Verse 34, for the waved breast and the heaved thigh, I always think of puking when I hear heaved, I have taken from the children of Israel out of the sacrifices of their peace offerings, and I have given them to Aaron the priest and to his sons as their portion forever from the children of Israel. And then in verse 36, which Yahweh commanded to be given to them, it is their portion forever throughout their generations. Christians really need to renegotiate the term generations. This is where the apologetic is going to lie. What's a generation? What do we mean by generations? Could it mean just the generations that are there, and then at some point, what do you think forever means? That's what I would ask. What do you think forever and ever and what do you think that word could possibly mean? Temporarily? Is that what happens with that word? You think it means temporarily because you can renegotiate the word generation? If there are more Levites, if these people still exist, they should still be doing their priestly thing, like it says in Exodus 40. This is not something that was meant to be temporary, it seems. Or at least if we're supposed to believe what the book says, Yahweh thinks that this is going to go on forever. Christians, of course, need to somehow get away from that because it stopped. Someone got it wrong. And if you want to believe that God is perfect and omniscient and all those things and got it wrong, that's where it gets really difficult, right? That's where you have to get your cognitive dissonance hat on and really own it through bad apologetics. Whoa, change of scenery, right? Well, this is crazy. I was editing this brilliant episode and I realized I totally forgot to talk about chapter 8. In verse 23 and 24, they have these really specific details, and this happens throughout the 10 chapters, but where it's like, where are we going to put the blood? Put it on the toe, put it on the horn, with your index finger, just touch different places, your earlobe, with the blood, which happened back in Exodus as well. You guys will remember that. And these things may represent something. There may be a reason for these very specific things. But what it reminded me of was the stupid thing that Christians say about how special their religion is. Like, they've got these points of difference. So the big one is that all other religions depend on what you do, but this is the only one that depends on what was done for you. Oh my goodness, this is the only religion like that? You could say that about anything because it's made up, right? So it could be like, hey, this is the only religion where they first touch the horn, then they touch the little toesies with blood. None of the other religions had you touching toesies with blood. It's just a point of difference in a made up religion. Points of difference don't make something true. But it could just be that, right? Like, there's so many different cultures that are all sacrificing animals constantly. And the Hebrews might have been like, okay, how are we going to do this different? Well, we'll touch the head of the animal as if we honor it. Like, why don't we do that? That's a good one. Okay, very good. Yeah. And we'll have a variety of different offerings, peace, trespass, whatever. They don't do those. They just do. And by the way, no kids anymore. We won't do any more kids. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. These points. This makes ours true and ours better because we're killing differently and we're touching blood on things differently. We're smearing differently. We're waving. People don't know that no one else is doing the wave. I just wanted to point that out. Next time somebody tries to validate Christianity by saying, well, look at these points of difference in our religion. It's like, yeah, I could make up a religion that has the exact same thing, and then I could also add other points of difference. Would that make it true? It's just absolutely meaningless and it does nothing. I think there was a moment in chapter 18 where I commented on how wasteful this was. And I keep on mentioning, oh, you waste another animal. You're wasting meat, this kind of thing. And I'm always very flippant about it. I've put it in some comments today, actually. But if you really think about it, it's like, what are you doing here? Like, what is this? God made these animals and just wants to see them killed and loves that they're burnt and wasted and nobody gets any benefit from them whatsoever? Is there really something noble here? Can we really paint this as a good thing somewhere along the line? Is there some way to spin this to say that, like, pretty solid stuff, God? Like, it seems so obviously pointless and barbaric and not something that would come from a good, perfect, all-powerful being that wouldn't need anything. He can conjure the smell of burning flesh if he wants it. He can just, oh yeah. People can almost do that. Oh, remember that? I can imagine the taste of a sour cherry blaster and it makes my mouth salivate. We can do that. If we can do it, then God can do it infinity times better. Why does he need the waste? It's so absolutely dumb to think that this could be real. But one of the fantastic viewers on this channel and a friend of mine on TikTok, Denise, actually had a really clever comment, and I wanted to highlight that. She made the connection that God loves the smell of burning flesh, and that might be why he sends billions of people to hell. He wants to smell their burning flesh. He enjoys that. He gets a lot of pleasure out of that. That would make sense if you're a Calvinist, especially, because it's like, okay, there's billions of people that are going to be burning in hell for eternity. And why is that? Well, God needs fuel. He needs something to fuel that fire. And he doesn't care about anyone. He hates everybody. He's a monster, except for 144,000. Except there's 144,000 of you that he's a huge fan of. But for the most part, he just wants to smell the smell of burning flesh. And that's why he's made all the flesh. But anyway, seems just as reasonable as anything else. Back to the regularly scheduled version of me. So then in chapter 9, we get a really fun event where Yahweh is coming down to reveal himself. Guess who's coming to dinner? Guess who's coming to dinner? Yahweh's going to be here. Are you kidding me? We're going to do a meet and greet. It's going to be amazing. And they get everything set up. Everything's just perfect. All the ducks are in a row. All the blood is spilt all over the place, smeared, put on all the right horns and ears and toes, everything just as Yahweh wants it because, he's so particular about how they smear blood. But this really does fly in the face of divine hiddenness. Because I don't know if you guys know the apologetic and the argument for divine hiddenness. The argument of divine hiddenness is solved, just like every other concern with Christianity, it's solved with free will. The reason why we need divine hiddenness is because if God just showed up, that would negate our free will. We would be like, oh no, God is here. He's definitely watching. He does totally exist. We can't just believe in him and sort of feel free to do what we're going to do. And then, it's up to us to actually follow him. And so we need that sort of mystery. It's hard to steel man that argument when it's so stupid. But here we have Yahweh showing up again. Did no one at the base of Mount Sinai or Mount Horeb have free will? Did Abraham not have free will? Did Isaac not have free will? Did Moses not have free will? Everyone who really truly knows that God exists through all sorts of very big, obvious shows of power and actually showing up and showing his glory, as the text says, do these people just not have any sort of free will then? Is that going to be the logical conclusion of that argument? How'd you wiggle out of that one? I'm curious. What's the apologetic to excuse divine hiddenness in one breath, but then Yahweh, he's here. Do you guys remember when they described the ephod, the thing that the priests wear, or the ark, or the menorah? These are real things that they describe how they want you to do it, covering it with gold and fashioning different angels and how the angels are even supposed to look bent over and how the menorah is supposed to be shaped. Anyway, we get all these details, these specific details for all these real things that the Hebrews are going to make for Yahweh. But then Yahweh shows up and there's no description of him. It's just his glory is there. He is there. There's something there because fire comes out of it, right? Spoiler alert. Yahweh is physically there, it seems to be, but there's no description of it. We can't describe it. What did it look like? What did it feel like? I'll tell you why we don't know. It's not real. Right? We can describe everything that's real. We know tables. We know gold plating. Why can't we describe Yahweh? Sure, maybe the description would be just crazy. You wouldn't be able to get your head around it. But they didn't even try. Again, because it's not real, guys. They're really good at describing things that are real. Yahweh's not one of those things. So I powered through this chapter. I think you guys will remember that I speed these things up. That's reading it like a Christian. This is the problem. Christians will just power through a thing, right? They'll just put their heads down and just not pay attention to what's being said. They'll just read the words and get through it. Maybe one verse will jump out at them, God is so loving. They'll be oh, this is powerful. God is loving. Where are they? They're at the base of Mount Sinai. God says he's loving and he's slow to anger and abounding in love. That is amazing. I love that verse. They just totally glossed past where he had the Levites kill 3,000 people, but they're just oh my goodness, he's amazing, But that's how I read it. I really didn't retain anything. And I'm numb. I'm numb to all the blood. Imagine there being so much blood, you're just I don't know. Yep, bleed out another ram. That sounds good. This is a brutal book, man. So at the end of chapter 9, God finally shows up and it's really exciting. Fire bursts forward from Yahweh's chest. He puts on a show. It is a show. It's a big performance. But is it particularly creative? Just fire? Just one thing I will give to the Hebrews. One, their book has captured the imagination of billions of people at this point. It's popular. it has really worked. So for me to critique it is, okay, maybe is going to come off as a little bit arrogant. But look, I'm just reading it and I'm just reacting to it. It's not my fault. But they do put in a lot of creative different moves, right? Like there's a lot of different things that occur which are interesting. Like parting of the Red Sea, a pillar of fire, a pillar of cloud, Moses having to arbitrarily hold up his hands so that they can win a war, manna and quail, throwing a piece of wood in a river with bitter tasting water so that it tastes sweet all of a sudden or something. Like these are like creative little moves. They're inconsistent, right? There's like all sorts of different things that God does, which are sometimes really creepy, sometimes really big, sometimes kind of small. They're just there for interesting stories. This one, interesting, the fire comes out, but not very interesting, like not really fascinating, not incredibly compelling or riveting. It's not the most creative thing you guys have ever written. Can I say that? But I was happy to see something, nay, anything that wasn't just, this is how you kill something for me. So for that, I say, thank you, ancient Hebrews. I'm worried sometimes when I say this stuff that there are some ancient Hebrews that are in the afterlife and they're going like, oh, we did our best, man. Like it was word of mouth. We're not like some sort of like, we're not literary geniuses. We were just like, just people back then, we're just like, why are you giving us such a hard time? Like we tried, and in the end, half the time they wrote it down wrong. Can I say that they wrote it down way wrong? The stories that we came up with, Enoch, is like the story I came up with. That was incredible, and then they didn't write it down for ages. And when they finally did, they didn't even put it in the book because the guy got it all wrong. Then we get to chapter 10, and we have the sad story of Nadab and Abihu, who we don't know what their intention was. They get the incense wrong. They do it incorrectly. Sounds like they are doing their best. They just did their best a little wrong, and Yahweh destroys them. And I suppose that you would say that doing an offering with strange fire, with like the wrong incense or whatever, not the way God commanded, is sin. And I think that is like true to a larger point. To Yahweh, sin is just not obedience, whatever that might look like, right? So as long as you're being entirely obedient, you're not sinning. But as soon as he's told you to do something, as soon as he's said, go and kill those children, if you don't do that, well, now you're sinning. So sinning isn't killing children. Sinning is not killing children if you're told to kill children. Any sort of action, and you can pick any action whatsoever, if you're commanded to do it, doing it isn't sin anymore. If you're commanded not to do it, then doing it would be sin. But the actions themselves are not objectively wrong, right? There's nothing intrinsically wrong about killing a child. It really just depends if you're told to or not, or if you're told not to, etc. So that's pretty scary because we can't know what is right or wrong, and things that would turn your stomach or things that would make you curl up and cry might actually be good sometimes. Like those might be things that you need to do. It's hard to get your head around, but that is what Christians have to believe. And then they have the audacity to claim that they have a moral argument or a moral high ground. You don't have morals. You have one moral: obedience. That's it. There is a singular morality, and it's obedience. Let's just hope you're listening to the right voice. So 2 of Aaron's kids are killed. They're probably adults at this point, but they're his sons, which he probably doesn't love because, nobody loves their kids back in Bible times. But Aaron holds his peace, and I think that means he just shuts up about it. He doesn't react. He gets over it. He's like, yeah, I guess that's reasonable. Don't want to ruffle any feathers. I guess whatever you want, Yahweh, whatever you want. Maybe he's even, you know what, I probably would have done much the same thing, yeah. Um, I mean, they deserved it. What did they do again? Strange fire. Yeah, no, definitely burn them alive. That does make sense, you know. But I think it's because Aaron knows that he made a golden calf. God still hasn't struck me down for that. I should have been smited by now. Smote. I should have been smoted by now, but maybe he forgot. He is very forgetful. He forgot we were slaves in Egypt all that time, and he also forgot about Noah on the ark, and those are the last people on the planet. So yeah, I think he's forgotten. He killed 3,000 other people for that. I don't think he liked it. I don't want to draw too much attention. So yeah, for sure, kill my kids for making strange fire. It seems just a little bit inconsistent the way God decides to enact his justice, what bothers him, and what he's totally cool with, man. I'm not going to blame Aaron. What are you talking about? He's my guy. I'll blame those 3,000 people. It was their earrings. We get this story of the other boys, Eleazar and Ithamar. And in verse 7 it says, "Why haven't you eaten the sin offering in the place of the sanctuary, since it's the most holy, and he has given it to you to bear iniquity of the congregation, to make atonement for them by Yahweh? Behold, its blood was not brought to the inner part of the sanctuary. You certainly should have eaten it in the sanctuary as I commanded." I feel like this chapter is like object lessons, so you can see what happens if you don't do the stuff in the previous chapters, you know? It's just like a little skit that they put on, a dramatization of these ideas, so that you're like, okay, right. So if they didn't bring blood in and the thing is there, then they should be eating it. Okay. So you see, it's kind of the practical. They give you the first 9 chapters, then they go, okay, so what would happen if someone killed a ram, bled it out on the outside, notice the outside of the tabernacle, and then brings it in, throws the gross stuff on the burn pit, and then cooks up the fat for Yahweh. This is a trespass offering. By the way, this is a trespass offering. Okay. What do we do with the meat in the holy place? They're like, eat it. You know, you got it. You eat it. Yeah. Now let's watch this skit. Oh my goodness, there's some meat here. I don't think I need to eat it. I'm just going to go home to bed. You know, and they're like, uh-oh. Well, now Yahweh wants to kill Eleazar and Ithamar because they didn't eat the food. You know, it's like that kind of thing where they're showing you, and I don't know if like when they bring this to the new priests, they're like, okay, now we're all going to do a role play. Okay, you're going to be Ithamar. You're going to be Eleazar. You know, it's like, I feel like that's what's going on here. They're like, just so you guys really know how we're supposed to do all the stupid things that Yahweh told us to do, here's a little bit of a fun story. If that's not the case, and these are true stories, then Yahweh screwed up again because he chose the wrong people for the job. Like, Aaron's kids are such morons, aren't they? They keep on making mistakes. Nadab and Abihu, like right out of the gate, screwed up, you know, dead. And then Eleazar and Ithamar was like, oh, we don't know. What are we supposed to eat? What are we supposed to eat? It's like, you guys are so dumb. Can you pick some people that are going to be able to follow instructions, God? Moses didn't want to do what he was going to do. You had to get Aaron involved, and then they didn't even do what they were supposed to do, took on different roles than what they planned initially. I mean, God keeps on guessing things. Like, I'm going to get these people are going to be my main people. And then they fail. I mean, they're all dumb or they don't want to do it or something like that. Why is Yahweh so inept at picking people? He sucks so bad. I know the apologetic is, see, he can make work with anyone. Then just don't even have anyone. Just do it yourself. No, but he needs people to just do the thing. What are you talking about? Yahweh, do it yourself. Like, you're no good at choosing human beings, okay? You're really bad at that. And then finally, I really like the last verse of Leviticus chapter 10, verse 20. When Moses heard that, it was pleasing in his sight. And I know that this is just like a translation. These aren't like literal terms that mean like literal sight, but it always comes off as backwards. He heard it and it was pleasing in his sight. He heard it, it was pleasing to his ears. He saw it, it was pleasing to his... No, we'll just mix it up. I understand what it's saying, but I just love that it's always so silly and backwards. Anyway, guys, that's been the recap of Leviticus chapter 1 through 10. We'll see you next time for a super special episode, because I'm trying to do a special episode every 10 episodes. Let me know if you enjoy those. But please, if you haven't subscribed and you're actually literally here, that's crazy, but subscribe. I always say that. Leave a comment and like this video. And of course, we will see you next time. Thank you again for being here and watching these longer episodes. Although some of you say you really like the recaps. I like doing the recaps. They can be interesting, and I don't actually have to read the Bible. I already did that part, so they're a little bit fun. But listen, have a great week. Bye.